Hi there, welcome back for our third and final actually it's an itty bitty little lecture about sponsor relationships, and this is the final one in the study initiation series. So I'm going to talk about sponsor relationships, and the reason I'm talking about this, I'm not going to tell you anything in here that is earth-shattering. This is going to be very logical, common sense kind of thing. The reason why I think it bears worth repeating and talking about is because I have worked with some research coordinators who are very, very talented at their job. They're organized, they're analytical, they really understand things, they're detail-oriented, and they're horrible with people. And so to be a really good research coordinator, you have to have all of these skills. And one of those skills is really maintaining excellent sponsor relationships. So you're going to have sponsor relationships at your site. You're going to have some ongoing events, you're going to have some one-time events. The one-time events, the single events, are things like the investigator meetings. You're going to go to an investigator meeting and you're probably going to meet people there that you will never see again. So these single events, the study initiation meeting, you might never see any of those people again. So these single events can start to lead you to believe that your relationship isn't that important, but it is. We're going to talk about study closure in a minute. This is another time it's a single event, and you might have somebody come out and close a study you've never seen before, you'll never see again. And audits. These single events can sometimes trick a research coordinator into thinking that it doesn't matter how they behave, but collectively, your sponsor will remember how you behave and that relationship they have with you, whether it's the single events or the ongoing events. Routine teleconferences. So depending on what phase study it is, you might have phase 1 studies, a lot of teleconferences, and very, very close ongoing communication. Phase 3 studies, not so much, but you might have these ongoing events where now you start to think maybe this relationship with these individual people are sort of important. Your monitor, your clinical research associate is going to come out, like I said before, on a regular basis and verify your case report forms. This is actually a relationship most research coordinators would identify as their closest relationship. Your monitor will typically be the same person, and they will come for an extended period of time depending on how long your study lasts. So you might really get to know them very well, and some people develop good friendships with their monitors. Data clarification forms are those queries that come up once the data is entered into the database. Those are ongoing events, and you will be dealing with people at the sponsor, about completing those queries. So some key points you have to remember when you have a relationship with your sponsor is that your demeanor as the research coordinator has a very heavy influence on whether that sponsor wants to work with your site again in the future. It is easy for a research coordinator to underestimate how important they are to a research site. Oftentimes the coordinators will think it's the investigator that really has the most influence on whether a sponsor comes back, but in fact it is the research coordinator. The investigator might draw sponsors in and might really be the reason why you get a study, but whether they come back and give you repeat business is going to be really up to the research coordinator. So do not sell yourself short on how you interact with the sponsor and what it means to you in the future. Another key point to remember is treat the clinical research organization as if they were your sponsor. As a reminder, a sponsor can hire a CRO to conduct certain points of business. And so if a sponsor is small and they hire a CRO to come and do all of the monitoring visits, the CRO is acting on behalf of the sponsor. Treat them as if they were the sponsor. I've heard research coordinators say, I really love my sponsor, but I don't like my CRO, and I'm not going to be nice to them, and they drive me crazy. You have to treat the CRO as if they are the sponsor because they've been hired by the sponsor. Also, along those lines, do not complain to your CRO about your sponsor. That will get back to your sponsor. They are, for purposes of business, one and the same. Excuse me. When at all possible, when you're negotiating something with your sponsor, avoid absolute refusals. Now, this might be a study budget up front. This might be something you're negotiating in the course of doing business during the life of the study. A good example, or an example, would be your sponsor wants your data clarification forms returned in 24 hours. Now, that might not be possible. But what I always tell people to say is, don't say no, period. You could say no, comma. How about if I return some of them in 24 hours and the remainder of them by next week? So there's always going to be this ability to negotiate. The only time you should ever say no to your sponsor is if what they're asking you to do is illegal or unethical. Those are the only times an absolute refusal is okay. The rest of the time you're going to negotiate something with your sponsor. And so avoid the absolute refusals, because those really wear down a relationship quickly. And then also maintain healthy professional boundaries. I just mentioned earlier that you are going to have people, your monitor, your clinical research associate. You're probably going to develop some good friendships with some of those. They're going to be at your site frequently. You're going to get to know them. But maintain healthy professional boundaries. And what I mean by that is, don't gossip about your coworkers. Do not gossip about your investigator. Don't say anything unhealthy about your research site to them, because at some point the lines might get blurred. You might start going out to lunch with this person. You might go to dinner with this person. And so at some point the boundaries get a little bit blurred, but maintain, you can still be friends with them. You can go to dinner and lunch with them, but you have to remember that this is primarily a professional relationship. I always like to remind people of that. So sponsors are your customers, and I think that's probably obvious now. But here are some things that actually, it's going to seem silly, but these things need to be said, because I've seen all these things in real life. Answer your phone calls and return your messages quickly. If that means that on your phone you say messages received after 4 p.m. will not be answered till the following day, then say that. Your sponsor wants to know they're important, and they want prompt answers. They want prompt responses. Don't make promises you can't keep. All right, so if you're going to tell your sponsor that you could answer half of the data clarification forms in 24 hours and the other half by next week, that's fair. Don't tell them you can answer all the data clarification forms if you know it's physically not possible. Because once you make promises, those are expectations, and if you can't manage to keep the expectations, it creates a disappointing kind of attitude between you two. Deal with complaints promptly. Your sponsor might call you and say they have a problem with something that's happened to your site. No one likes handling complaints, but complaints are so much more manageable if you get to them right away. It's when the complaint is not addressed and it sort of stews that it becomes really difficult to handle. So complaints are part of life, and if you answer them quickly, they will be much easier to swallow than if they sit around. And here's one that actually sounds silly to say, but it has to be said. Be helpful to your sponsor even if there's no immediate gain. This is a relationship that you're developing and you're maintaining. And sometimes you have to do nice things for your sponsor. They might be on your last nerve. They might be driving you crazy. But even if there's no immediate gain, you have to be helpful. Sometimes people will say, well, what's in it for me? You don't know what's in it for you. It might be something down the road. And so when you create that goodwill and the credit in the bank with the sponsor, that might be really wonderful for you later on down the road. And take the extra step. That's part of being helpful. If you know that you could do something additional that would make the sponsor happy and it would make your relationship with the sponsor better, go ahead and do that. Like I said before, you as the clinical research coordinator are going to determine whether that sponsor comes back. And so how you make yourself valuable to your investigator is doing these kinds of things. Okay, Karen Woods still telling us how to prepare for a study. Please let me know what questions you have, and then we'll finish out this module in a minute with a study closure lecture. And take care. Talk to you soon.